The most terrifying monster needs you to say yes. It doesn't break in, it waits, smiling, at your door. And when you whisper, "Come in," it's already too late. This is not just a legend, this is a mirror. What if the most feared creature in mythology, an immortal, blood-drinking predator, was powerless unless you invited it inside? That's the vampire's oldest rule. It doesn't break down doors, it waits. And the scariest part? You have to say yes. Why would a monster need permission to attack? That's what makes vampires different from werewolves or ghosts. While others invade, the vampire negotiates. It doesn't just want your blood, it wants your trust. Before castles and coffins, people lived in huts with dirt floors. Even then, they feared the space between inside and out. The threshold, the line between safe and unsafe, was sacred, and for good reason. The Romans prayed to Janus, god of doorways, to keep danger out. In Japan, paper charms were placed on doorframes. Mesopotamians buried talismans under their thresholds. Across cultures, people believed one thing: evil must be kept out unless you let it in. The vampire doesn't force its way in. It waits, and that obedience makes it more terrifying. If you must welcome it, then your downfall is your own choice. That's not just horror, that's psychological manipulation. Unlike other monsters, the vampire reflects us. It forces us to ask, why did I let it in? It doesn't overpower us. It waits for our voice. That's what makes it more than a beast. It's a dark reflection of trust and vulnerability. The Celts nailed horseshoes to their doorways. Egyptians carved protective spells into wood. In China and Japan, even the beam you step over was sacred. Every ritual said the same thing: outside must stay outside. In Slavic legends, people scattered seeds at the door. Why? Because the undead would stop to count, one by one, until sunrise. It wasn't just protection, it was delay, and delay meant survival. Vampires weren't always strangers. In some cultures, they were family: your aunt, your brother, your child. Returned wrong. That was the true terror, not the unknown, but what you thought you'd buried. Our ancestors didn't have science, but they had instincts. They knew fear wasn't just about monsters, it was about choices. Every charm, every ritual whispered, don't trust too easily. Some guests knock gently and still destroy. Vampires don't kick down doors, they make you open them. That's their true horror. You feel in control, but the invitation came from you. They don't destroy your world, you hand it over piece by piece. We hesitate when someone knocks. The mind pulls both ways, curiosity versus caution. That ancient tug of war hasn't gone away. The vampire lives in that hesitation. Ghosts sneak, werewolves break in, but vampires, they wait. That patience is what makes them terrifying. They know you'll open the door eventually. Vampires don't need claws if you say yes. Your trust is the weapon they use. That's what separates them from beasts. You make the horror possible. Dracula didn't growl, he greeted. He was refined, polite, even charming. That's the trap. You don't run from a gentleman, you invite him in. In Victorian society, denying a guest was nearly unthinkable. Dracula knew this. He dressed the part, played the role, and used manners as a weapon. Hospitality became his disguise. Long before Dracula, ancient cultures treated thresholds as sacred. In Rome, they prayed to gods of doorways. In Japan, they hung paper talismans. The idea was always the same: what's outside stays outside, unless you say otherwise. Vampires are never just about blood. They represent our deeper fears, of losing control, of trusting the wrong person, of letting danger wear a smile. That's what makes them timeless.
If you're still watching and this topic interests you, consider subscribing to support the channel. Thanks a lot.
In Slavic folklore, villagers scattered rice at the door. Vampires were believed to compulsively count grains, buying precious time until sunrise. It wasn't force, it was clever delay. Old vampire tales weren't about strangers. They were about loved ones returning changed. Your brother, your child, your wife. It wasn't the unknown we feared, it was the familiar made wrong. Sometimes, the vampire isn't a monster, It's memory. Grief plays tricks on the mind, making us hope that knock on the door is someone we lost. That's why the invitation rule hurts. You're not letting in a beast, you're welcoming a ghost. These ancient vampires didn't seek conquest, they sought home. They believed they still belonged. That belief made them tragic and terrifying. In 1897, Bram Stoker transformed the myth. He gave the vampire class poise and charm. Dracula wasn't the bloated corpse of village tales. He was a refined predator with a velvet voice and aristocratic manners. Dracula didn't need to barge in. His greatest power was how polite he seemed. In a world obsessed with manners, he became unstoppable. Not because of his fangs, but because of our fear of being rude. Today, thresholds aren't wooden frames. They're screens, apps, and logins. The vampire doesn't knock, it pings, and we answer with a tap. Modern vampires don't wear cloaks. They wear avatars. They slip into your feed, your inbox, your screen. They don't need blood. They feed on attention. Each click, each scroll, each allow access is a whispered invitation. Not forced, but chosen. Just like the old stories, won't you let me in? The vampire doesn't just reflect fear. It reflects us. Our desires, our blind trust, our willingness to ignore instinct. That's what makes it monstrous. In every vampire tale, the real terror isn't the bite, it's the choice. You invited it, you said yes. The monster didn't take control, you handed it over. The vampire morphs with time. From rotting corpses to social media influencers, it always fits the era, always one step behind your guard. Once the threshold was a wooden beam. Today, it's a notification. The vampire doesn't need to knock, your phone buzzes instead, and you look. The predator is no longer at your door. It's in your apps, your DMs, your late-night scrolls, hidden behind smiling avatars and clever bios. You tapped accept. You granted permission. You opened the digital door with your own hand. That's the new invitation rule. This vampire doesn't drain your blood. It drains your time, your attention, your sense of self. And the worst part? You barely notice. We like to think we're in control, that we'd never let the wrong one in. But the vampire knows better. It waits until you doubt yourself. The true horror isn't the monster outside. It's the one you welcomed in. It didn't force entry. You gave it a name, a smile, and space. The vampire is a metaphor, a mirror held up to our desires and fears. It reflects what we ignore, the red flags we excuse, the instincts we silence. Across cultures and centuries, the vampire has changed forms, but never its meaning. It adapts to whatever era fears most. Today, that fear is being watched and still saying yes. The modern vampire bites without teeth. It drains without touching. It enters through trust and leaves you empty. The next time you get a message, a knock, a ping, pause. Ask yourself, is this a guest or a predator in disguise? Because once it's in, it never really leaves. We all think we'd say no, that we'd recognize danger, close the door, but curiosity is strong, loneliness is louder, and predators know this. The rule still stands, just like it did in the old stories. The vampire can't come in unless you let it, and that decision is always yours. In a world full of knockings, on doors, on screens, and hearts, ask yourself one thing: who do you let in, and who do you become when you do? Do you believe the vampire still exists, just with a different face? Tell us what you think in the comments. What scares you more, the monster or the moment you say yes? Thanks for watching and for crossing this threshold with us. If this story left you thinking, subscribe to Haunted Hills Archive. More tales of myth, fear, and truth are waiting beyond the next door.